there was a button on this screen that I hit. Okay, I guess I'm just crazy. Okay, so open the wrong thing. Here we go. We're going to start going over this study guide. So, number 1 says find the geometric mean between 2 and 5. Okay? So remember, finding the geometric mean, super simple. You're just going to take those two numbers. You're going to multiply those two numbers, and then you're going to take the square root of that. So the square root of 2 times 5. Okay. Square root of 2 times 5. So what is that? That's going to be square root of 10, right? And then if you could leave it as square root of 10 because it can't simplify. 2 and 5 are both prime numbers. But you could also plug it in your calculator and get an approximate answer. So what's that answer going to be? Is that right? That's what I got. Okay, so 2 and 3 are about using those geometric means to solve a problem, right? Y'all remember when we did this? This is an altitude right here. So we've got this 4 here. We've got 6 there. We don't know this whole value right here, right? But we do know that if we multiply, let me think just a second. If we multiply 4 times x and take the square root of that, that's going to give us the value for 6. Y'all remember us doing that? So if we're going to solve this little equation right here, what are we going to do to solve that? So we got to square both sides, right? Like that. And that's going to give us 36 equals 4x. And then what do we do? Divide by 4, right? So what is x? 9. So x is 9. So in number 2, x is 9. Right? Is that right? No, they have x is 13. What did we miss? 9 plus 4. That's right. This right here. It's 4 times this right here. So let's call this like y, right? So 4 times y. So y is 9. And then we do 9 plus 4 to get 13. My bad. My brain just took a mini vacation for a second. Your brain ever do that?
So we don't do 6 squared?
No, we still do that. Let me rework that, okay? Because I confused y'all. That's my bad. I'm sorry. So let me rework it real quick. So you've got this triangle like so, right? And this is your altitude. And we know this is 6. And we know this piece is 4. We don't know this piece over here. We're going to name it y because they didn't name it anything. And we're wanting to know this whole piece, right? Like this. Well, if we did 4 times y and took the square root of it, that's geometric mean, that would equal 6. Y being this side over here. Y'all with me? So we're going to square both sides just like we did a while ago. We're going to solve the equation exactly like we did. So it's still going to be 36. This is still going to be 4y, right? And then we're going to divide both sides by 4 just like we did earlier. So that's going to give us y equals 9. Now that's this part right here. But they're asking for the whole thing, not just this part. So then we take that 9 and add 4 to it. And we get 13 as our answer. Does that make sense? Okay. So it's exactly what we did. I just forgot that was not the whole piece. It was just that part over there. You good? Okay. So let's look at 3. So on number 3, they give us this. I'm going to move this over a little bit. So they give us this little diagram right here. And this time, they're asking us for this side over here. Now, remember, to find that side over there, we're going to take this piece and the total length, what's the total length of that? 14. And we're going to do the geometric mean of these two numbers. So we would do, to find x, we're going to do the square root of 2 times 14, like that. Right? And so 2 times 14 is 28. Okay? And so for this, I want you to just do the square root of 28 and give me an approximate answer. Rounded to the nearest whatever I tell you. So let's do rounded to the nearest hundredth on this. So 2 decimal places. 5.29. So that's going to be our answer. So on the back where they put answers, what do they have? They have what? So if we type 2 square roots of 7 in our calculator, see how you get the same thing? And how you can check to make sure your answer is right, even though theirs are in different format than what yours is. Okay? So that's what we're going to put as 5.29. All right? So let's look at number 4. What information do we have on number 4? What do you see there? So we've got this length, we've got this width. What is this shape? What is this shape? That's a triangle, isn't it? What kind of triangle? Right triangle. And what part of the right triangle are you trying to find right there? Hypotenuse. What are you going to use to find that hypotenuse? Anybody remember? Come on, y'all. Remember this? What's that called? Pythagorean Theorem. You need to know this for tomorrow, okay? I'm just straight up telling you. You need to know it. Okay, so what are the A and the B in our problem? The 60 and 20. Why is X the C in this problem? Because it's the longest side. It's the hypotenuse, right? It's the one we don't know. So then we just do our math here. So we would do 60 squared, which I think is 360, but y'all better check me. $3,600. I wasn't even close, was I? Okay, and then 20 squared is 400. That one I do know. And so we add those together. We get 4,000. And then how do we get just C by itself? Square root it. So what you going to get? Let's go to the 10th. 63.2. So our answer for number 4 is 63.2. I'm trusting y'all's math is right. Okay, so number 5, we've got this little triangle here. Now, this little triangle is not a right triangle, but it contains a right triangle. Do y'all see it? And so this is, because this is 20 and this is 20 and this is 20, that means that this whole triangle is equilateral, right? So if it's equilateral, that means all of these angles are 60. Y'all remember that? So we can do this more than one way. We could say, okay, so this is a 60, 30, 90 triangle. That little right triangle is a 60, 30, 90 triangle. And if it's a 60, 30, 90 triangle, and we know if this whole thing is 20, then this piece is 10, right? I'm going to turn that autofocus off so it doesn't keep going in and out, in and out. It's driving me nuts. Okay, so we know that on a 60, 30, 90 triangle, 30, 60, 90, we know that our short side is 1, our long side is 2, and then our medium side is whatever the short side is times the square root of 3. So 10 times the square root of 3. Do y'all remember us doing that? So then we can plug that in our calculator, 10 times the square root of 3. And what does that give us? What is it, buddy? 17.3. So that would be 17.3. If you look on the back, it's going to say 10 square roots of 3. I'm pretty sure. If you look at the answers for number 5. Yeah. Now, that's not the only way we can do this. So we could do it another way. So we have this little right triangle, right? We know this side is 20. We know this side is 10 because it's half of 20. And we don't know this side, but we know this is a right triangle. So we know that we could use Pythagorean Theorem on this if we wanted to, right? So we could do, what parts of this do we know? We know like one of the legs and the C, right? So we could plug 10 in for one of the legs and 20 in for the C, and then we could just solve this using Pythagorean Theorem. So you don't have to memorize, you don't have to know those special right triangles to still be able to answer this question, right? So that's going to be 100 plus b squared equals 400. And then we're going to subtract 100. So b squared is 300, right? And you're going to take the square root, and what do you wind up with? See how we get the same answer either way? So you could do that problem either way. Okay? Okay. Number 6. I was so confused for just a second. I was like, find x. I don't even see a problem. Did y'all see that? How weird that one is right there. So tell me what you notice when you look at this little shape. This is number 6, and it says find x. So what do you know? So if this little shape is all the same all the way around, what do we call that? Say what? If it was a triangle, but this being all the same all the way around, what is this whole shape right here? It's a square. It wasn't a trick question. Y'all thought I was asking a trick question. That's a square, right? So if that's a square and we cut that square in half like this, right? So all of these angles are 90 degrees. Y'all with me? And we cut it in half. What are these angles now? If you cut a 90 degree angle in half, what do you get? 40. So we've got a 45 and a 45 and a 90. Do y'all remember when we learned about 45, 45, 90s? So 45, 45, and a 90. And what is this side over here? They told us it's 22. That's what that 22 indicates, right? So if we're looking for these short sides, remember on a 45, 45, 90, so on a 45, 45, 90, then our ratio is 1, 1, square root of 2. That means whatever this is, whatever this value is the same, And this value is that number times the square root of 2. Y'all remember that? Well, they gave us this one. They gave us whatever's across the hypotenuse, right? So that 22 is equal to whatever our short side is times the square root of 2. So far, so good? And then how do we get that x by itself? What are we going to do? How do we get rid of that square root of 2? What are they doing to each other when they're side by side like that? They're multiplying. So how do you unmultiply stuff? Divide. So we're going to divide by it. Like so. Now, we could just type this in our calculator. Right? So if we just type that in our calculator, 22 divided by the square root of 2, what do we get? Say that again. 15.5. So that's our approximate answer, right? But I also want to refresh your memory on this. Remember, if that's down there, we can't leave that down there. We have to multiply by that square root of 2 on top and bottom. You remember doing that? So that would be 22 square roots of 2 over 2, because that gets rid of that. And then this here could be divided. So 22 divided by 2 would be 11 square roots of 2. And if you look on the back, 11 square roots of 2 is what they're going to have as an answer. Now, that one, because of the way that one was set up, the only way you can do that one is knowing that 45, 45, 90. That's the only way you can do it, because they only gave you one side. They didn't give you two sides, right? Okay. Y'all feeling okay this morning? Everybody good? All right. So let's look at number 7. So it says in a parallelogram ABCD, AD is 4. So this over here is 4. What do you notice about this triangle right here? It's a right triangle. And then they said the measure of angle D is 60. So the measure of angle D, that's this angle right here, is 60. And they want you to find AF, which is this side. So what kind of triangle is this? If this angle is 60. Does it even matter that this is a parallelogram? Does that even make any difference? We're not even looking at this part of the shape. That doesn't even make any difference. The only thing that matters is that we're looking at this little right triangle right here. Y'all see that little right triangle right there? And we know that this is 60. What's this angle up here got to be? If this is 60 and this is 90, what's that angle? 30, right? So this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Now this one you're going to have to know your 30, 60, 90 triangle stuff on. Do you remember what that is? Your 1, 2, square root of 3. Remember that? So 1 is what your short side is. 2 is what your long side is. Square root of 3 is what your medium side is. That means whatever your long side is, this is what we know. If it's 4, what does that make our short side? Makes it 2, because remember, it's half of that, right? And then your medium side is that number times the square root of 3. So 2 times the square root of 3. So on number 7, your answer is 2 times the square root of 3. 3.5. Is it coming back to you a little bit? It's been a lot of stuff, huh? Okay, so if we find X and Y. So what we got going on here? Remember, this is where you have a big right triangle, right? And then you have an altitude, and that cuts it into two smaller right triangles that are similar to your big right triangle. Y'all remember doing that? So if we look at this little right triangle right here, right? Do y'all see that little right triangle? Because we need to find X. So this is one of our first steps here. We need to find X. So we can say, well, this in our little right triangle, this right here is our medium side, 4 square roots of 3, right? And our, no, it's not. I just lied to y'all so big. It ain't our medium side. That's our hypotenuse. Do y'all see what I'm talking about? That is our hypotenuse, and it's 4 square roots of 3. So our medium side, let me do this differently. Let's back this up a second. If we look at our big triangle, this is our short side in our big triangle. So our medium side, which is something we're supposed to find, is going to be our short side, 4 square roots of 3, times the square root of 3. And what's that give us? $12. So this right here is going to be 12. That long side right there. Right? And then this side right here, so this was our hypotenuse, right? If we cut that in half, that's 2 square roots of 3, right? To make our little short side. And if we multiply that by the square root of 3, what are we going to get? Six. So our X is 6, our Y is 12. Y'all good so far? Alright, so number 9. Are we on 9? So number 9, find X to the nearest tenth. So this is a very basic trig one, because they gave you an angle measurement. They gave you which side. What side is that? Based on that angle, what side is that? Adjacent. What side are you wanting to know? Hypotenuse, right? So which trig function uses those? Well, let's do our little jingle. So some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on acid. So which trig function uses those two? C, which is cosine. So cosine of my angle, which is 18 degrees, equals 9.2, that's my A, over X. We don't know what X is. Now, how are we going to solve that? What do we have to do to solve it? So first thing we're going to have to do is multiply times X, right? So I said this about 4,000 times yesterday. I'm going to say it one more time today. Y'all, don't try to memorize shortcuts. Look at the math. You know how to do algebra, right? You know how to solve equations. Look at the math. How are we going to move that x? Well, we're going to multiply by x to get it out of there, right? And then once you've done that, we're going to keep looking at the math. We're not going to try to take shortcuts and memorize stuff. We're going to look at the math. How do we get this x by itself? We divide by the cosine of 18. Y'all, this is just like dividing by 5 or dividing by 7 or dividing by 2.93, right? You're just dividing by something that says cosine 18. So in your calculator, you just plug in 9.2 divided by cosine of 18. What do you get? 9.7. Okay. Okay, number 10. An A-frame house is 40 feet high and 30 feet wide. Find the measure of the angle that the roof makes with the floor. Round to the nearest degree. So, we're going to have to add us a little line in here to make this work. Do y'all know what an A-frame house is? Have you ever seen one in real life? So an A-frame house is a house that's like the roof comes down to the ground, like the letter A. And then it has the, just comes straight down. Does that make sense? So your A-frame house is shaped like this. Well, these two sides are going to be the same as each other, right? And so if we go straight down like this, then we can make us a little right angle, a little right triangle, right? And we know this over here is 40. And we know that if this whole bottom was 30, what's half of that bottom going to be? 15. So our new little triangle that we're dealing with, and I like to just draw the new triangle. So my new little triangle that I'm dealing with, this is 15, this is 40, this is the angle that I don't know. And that's the angle I want to know, right? So relative to this angle, what's 40? What do we call that side? Opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse? It is opposite. And then what do we call 15? Adjacent. Which trig function uses opposite and adjacent? So go to your trig functions. Tangent. So tangent of this angle we don't know has to equal 40 over 15. And remember, if you're finding that angle measurement, you have to do the opposite of tangent. So we're going to say that that angle is the inverse of tangent, 40 over 15. So remember, you only use that inverse if you're finding the angle measurement. But if you're finding the angle measurement, you have to use the inverse. So what is that? To the nearest degree. What you got? You forgot what? So on your calculator, you're going to do second tangent 40 divided by 15. Is that the right numbers? So what is that to the nearest degree? So the nearest degree would be the nearest whole number. 69. So our answer there is 69. Okay, number 13 or 11. Where did I get 13 from? I have no idea. Number 11. A 30-foot tree cast a 12-foot shadow. Find the measure of the angle of elevation of the sun to the nearest degree. So a 30-foot tree, we're going to draw a picture. A 30-foot tree cast a 12-foot shadow. And it wants us to find the angle of elevation of the sun. So the sun's over here, right? So if we draw this connection here, angle of elevation is always going up from your horizontal, right? So we're looking for this angle right here. So if we're looking for this angle, what is this side, this 12-foot side, relative to that angle? Adjacent. What is this 30-foot side relative to that angle? So which trig function is that? Tangent. So tangent of this angle we don't know is opposite 30 over adjacent 12. Now remember, we're looking for that angle measurement. So what do we have to use if we're looking for the angle measurement? What do we call that? The inverse of tangent, right? So you're actually going to plug this one in exactly the way we plugged in the last one. So you'll do second tangent 30 over 12. And what did you get? 68. So that last one was 69. This one is 68, right? Okay, we've only got two more. So number 12, a boat is 1,000 meters from a cliff. If the angle of depression from the top of the cliff to the boat is 15 degrees. So we're going to add to our diagram. So from the top of the cliff, this is the top of the cliff, right? So they're saying this angle is 15 degrees, right there. Now that angle is not in our triangle, but what do we know about that angle and another angle in our triangle? Let me rephrase my question. What do we know about the angle of elevation and the angle of depression? They're the same. So if this is 15 degrees, this angle right here is also 15 degrees, right? Now let's see what the question asks. If the angle of depression from the top of the cliff to the boat is 15 degrees, how tall is the cliff? So what part are we wanting to know on this? How tall is the cliff? In our triangle, that's this part, right? So we know this angle. We know this side, that's 1,000 meters. What is that side relative to that angle? It's the adjacent side. What is this side that we want to know relative to that angle? It's the opposite side. Man, we're doing a lot of tangent, aren't we? Okay, so the tangent of 15 degrees has to equal the opposite side, we don't know it, over the adjacent side. Now, how do we solve that? Don't try to think of shortcuts. Just use the math. How do we get x by itself here? Multiply by 1,000. Because that's going to cancel it, right? But if you do it to one side, you got to do it to the other. So on your calculator here, you're just going to type in 1,000 times tangent 15. This is not inverse. We're not looking for an angle. Just 1,000 times tangent 15. What you get? 267.9. So that's how tall the cliff is. 267.9 watts. Meters. Okay, number 13. We're going to draw us a picture because they didn't give us one. A plane is flying at an altitude of 10,000 feet and begins descending when the end of the runway is 50,000 feet from a point on the ground directly below the plane. Can you visualize what's going on in your head? You've got this plane that's up in the air, right? And there's a runway below the plane, like this, right? And this is the end of the runway down here. And they start coming down. They start coming down when this all the way down here is 50,000 feet from them, right? And this distance, and y'all, this is not going to be drawn to scale any whatsoever because I got way carried away with how long I made that. This distance right here is 10,000. That's their altitude. That's how high up they are, right? Now, they're asking us for the angle of depression. The angle of depression would be this angle. But what do we know about the angle of depression and the angle of elevation? They're the same. So if they're asking us for this angle, we can find this angle instead, right? So what sides do we know here? So we know the altitude, which is relative to this angle, is what? It's your opposite side, right? And we know this side, which is your adjacent side, right? So which trig function again? So tangent, all your tests will not be tangent. I'm going to make sure of that, okay? Just so you know, we're going to use some other trig functions, some sine, some cosine. Okay, so tangent of our unknown angle is opposite over adjacent, right? And then because we're finding the angle, we will do the inverse of tangent of our opposite over adjacent. So when you plug that in, what do you get? 11. That's our answer. All right. If there's anything on there that you were really struggling with, go back and try to work it on your own, okay?